Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your Consciousness Transformation Ascension Guide and the originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. This week, we're going to talk about, because this is such a huge topic right now, the idea of control, of fear, distractions, how they prevent us from truly realizing who we are, coming back into our power and stuff like that. Now, I could go in any of 50 directions on this topic because there is so much that has come up on this week. And so we're going to get a little meaty because I want to talk about stuff that we want to, that many don't want to think about, and they want to write off as, conspiracy and weird and all that kind of stuff. But let's just step back for a minute. Why is it that we actually live so much from fear? And this is the funny thing. Think about your motivations. Think about everything that you do in your life or don't do and why you don't do it, right? So why don't you eat a certain kind of food? Why do you only eat a certain kind of food? Why do you stay in a relationship that doesn't serve you? Why do you stay in a job that, pays the bills but makes you miserable? Why do you stay in a place? Same thing. Why do we do things that are not allowing us to, that cause us to give ourselves an excuse? Because ultimately that's what it is, causes us to give ourselves an excuse to not really step into our power, right? So that is a huge, huge thing to observe within ourselves when it comes to our self-development and evolution and realization. Because, people talk about the opposite of love is hate. Well, the opposite of love is really sort of fear, because fear is really a separation-based energy. So the basis of where I work from, and I talk about this in many of these podcasts, is that our natural state is love and connection, right? And wholeness is part of the whole divine consciousness. And anything of energy or emotion based in separation comes from the ego. And that's what the ego's job has been, is to explore that identity and separation, right? So, but energies that are attached to that have to do with fear. Number one, fear, anxiety, anger, resentment, guilt, doubt, sorrow, pain, judgment, blame, all kinds of stuff. That's all ego-based energies and emotions. So I talked the other week about listening to guidance and how to listen to your own guidance in a higher level and whatever, but also discerning what is coming from the ego, what is coming from higher guidance. The higher it goes, the less separate it will be, right? The more love-based and connected it will be, and just very centered and definite, right? So fear is one of the number one things, energies or emotions that come from separation. So when we live in a place of separation, we live in a place of exclusion where we believe that everybody outside of us or everybody around us or everything around us is not a part of who we are. We forget that wholeness in divine consciousness. We forget that connection. And that's been the practice and the game of embodying this part of our consciousness here on the planet. So that being said, you're like, now we're coming to a place of, okay, now we're shifting, I guess, to another game, right? And part of that is saying, okay, so now the first step, because this is so deeply habitualized in our consciousness, because we live in such a dense state in separation in our bodies, in these meat jackets. I was going to say fish bags, but you'd have to go and watch my podcast with Sarah Evignoni from Monday, the Ascended World thing, which was fun. But these separate, like we live in these bodies, are this little tiny piece of our consciousness, and then we forget, we cut ourselves off from the rest of it, and that's what we've done traditionally. So here's the thing. When we feel like something is outside of us, we believe that it is something that we have to control, that we don't understand because we don't remember what it is. Like we get afraid because we feel like it can harm us, because the fear of being sick or harmed comes from the idea that something is separate from us and that it can actually affect us negatively, right? And this is a hard thing for many to swallow, to say, well, what do you mean? Of course things can hurt me. There's a lot of debate about that when it comes to consciousness. It's what we choose to allow ourselves. When we come to a place of consciousness and living from a place of connection and wholeness and realizing we create these realities, we create our realities, we create different situations and experiences based on what it is for us to learn, for a lesson for us to learn, for us, the lessons that we've chosen to help others with. So it is essentially our choice at some level. Now, one of the best quotes out there is a Marie Curie quote. It's like, we fear what we don't understand, right? And that is truly, we fear what we don't remember. And I sort of say, we fear what we don't remember, right? And the reason we don't understand is we don't have context. The mind says, I need context to understand it. So therefore, it's scary, because if I don't trust my own, okay, we're going to come back to what I was come back to, right? Which is, if I don't trust my inner guidance as to do this or don't do this, or be here or don't be here, and I don't trust that everything is perfect, and I don't trust that it's all, it's all a perfect synchronicity, right? Then I am going to fear something, because I think I need to control it. I need to understand it, that it can harm me potentially, because the ego then starts to project out of this moment to say, what if this? What if it hurts me? What if it harms me? What if Now, one of the biggest things, the two of the biggest things out there that are big topics to talk about and having to do with fear. Number one is sickness and illnesses, like the coronavirus, big old monster marketing campaign is what I'm going to call it. And another one is like aliens. Now, it's really funny because some people will say, oh, it's fine to talk about the coronavirus, but aliens, oh, come on. It's the same thing. No different. And we can talk about many other topics, but these are two that are really sort of top of mind in the middle of the front and center right now in many societies and discussions. So we have gotten to a point where we have gotten so far outside of listening to our own guidance in general, like everyday living, that we take others' word for fact without checking our own guidance first. I work with people, since I do energy healing work, and I've worked with many people who are very sick, and I've worked with people who had the flu, and a lot of times I have clients who want to cancel a session. I'll be like, well, because they're sick, and I'm like, well, this is the best time to have a session, because then we can help you work through what it is you need to shift so that you can move forward, right? And there are many reasons why we get sick. One, as I've talked about, is messages that our higher self is trying to give us within our physical bodies, right? Number two is beliefs that we hold that are like, oh, I have to be like this other person, or I have to be like this to be human, or be accepted in humanity. And there's a lot of indications there underneath that have come up in the last couple of weeks too. It's like, wow, everything's so interrelated. It's like this big web that we've woven, excuse me. So when we put something outside of us and we believe, by the way, that something can hurt us, then guess what? We allow that door to open so that it can help, so that it can change. When we live in a place where we believe that the only way to be this is for us to be accepted and loved and valued, because we don't value and accept and love ourselves, is to have the human condition and, the whole misery loves company thing. Well, then if somebody else has something that comes up, we allow ourselves to have the same thing. And so sometimes it's as simple as that. Why do people get colds, right? One of the things I've told my oldest, who's 23, right? Like, she for years really never got colds. Once every couple of years or whatever. I hardly ever get colds or anything, because I've come to that acceptance within my body and my higher self, that I don't need that as my message, that I promise I'll get the message and listen before that has to happen. I don't believe I have to, take on a virus or take on a sickness to be a part of humanity, to be a part, to make me more valuable or interesting or whatever. So, but anyways, my oldest daughter, she used to almost never got viruses. And colds. Well, it's funny, because I think ever since she's lived with her boyfriend, who they live in her basement, right? He gets sick a lot. And funny that she suddenly now, they've been together for a really long time, well beyond when she used to get sick. Well before she ever got sick. And so it's funny that now it's like he'll get sick and then she gets sick. And I finally told her, you don't have to get sick. She goes, well, what do you mean? I live with them. And I said, no, you don't have to take it on. It is not your responsibility to take on his sickness. We do that energetically for other people all the time, or with other people, to say, I love you, right? What a weird way to say I love you, right? I'm going to get sick to show you how much I love you. Does that make any sense when we say it out loud? And then, people like get into these whole food things. So like right now we have the coronavirus stuff. Statistically, it's really not, it's not really as scary as many people are. I mean, there is totally not the pandemic they're talking about. I mean, and then the media is making so much hype out of it and all this kind of stuff. And in reality, it's really no more scary than the flu. And the reality is, when we come to this place of immunity and natural balance within ourselves, and this place of saying, well, I love myself and I accept myself and I know I'm divine and I don't have to be sick to be a part of the group, right? That sounds funny, but we do that because think about how many conversations have you heard or even been a part of where everybody joins in and like, oh God, I was flat on my back, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then the next person goes, oh yeah, I had that one time. And oh, I was out for 2 weeks and I couldn't breathe. And have you listened to those conversations? It's like we value that as part of the deficiency, what we consider deficiency of the human condition. So here's the thing. A virus comes into your body and sort of starts taking over your cells. When we allow that to happen, that means that we believe that we aren't worthy or strong enough to be able to really just say, no, that's okay. Move on. Right. Or even set your energy. So like many people who watch this are people who are much more advanced in all this energy stuff, whatever, in terms of like understanding this is you can just say, okay, well, you can come into my system, you can pass through and go right out the other side, and I'm not going to have any ill effects. Sure. Join me. But you know what? You're going to die out because I'm not going to, take on your stuff. That's what we're doing. We're taking on the virus's stuff and we take it in, right? And that's a big, deep habit that we're talking about now. Again, last week, in my Ascended World Plus with Sarah Sieg Avignoni, we talked about being empathic and the evolution and getting beyond the victimhood of being empathic. We don't have to take it on. Right? Because in the past, we have taken it on in terms of believing that makes us valuable and special and all that kind of stuff. We all have it. We have the ability. We're all connected. And the more we realize we're all connected, the more we also realize it's even more important to honor everybody's journey without having to take it on for yourself. So it's a huge, huge lesson for those of us who are very open and sensitive and connected, but many people, like many out there, but like a good majority of those of us embodied have that thing to go. And we have all these different layers of it. One is what? Viruses, sickness, flus, colds. Those are the most common ones, right? So the key is to step back. And the thing is we get lost in not listening to our guidance, and we listen to the media, which is really funny. If y'all follow JP Sears, who does like comedic spiritual videos or whatever, he did one about the coronavirus that I posted a couple days ago. And it's funny. It's like, oh yeah, because the best thing to do is, to get excited and hyped up and fearful so that, that'll actually, boost our immune system, which is, obviously the opposite. But the other thing about that is, yeah, guess what? Drama gets ratings for newscasters and network stations, and it sounds cool, but there's so much out there now, and there's so much information. It's like, what, here's the thing. Okay, what are they saying? Oh, the best way to fight the coronavirus, wash your hands at least 20 seconds. That's what we should be doing all the time, because, by the way, that is about any germ that can invade your body, that like goes through your skin or whatever. But people are missing that. Like you say that about the common cold, just to prevent yourself from getting the cold, wash your hands very thoroughly and make sure, that anything you touch or everything, you wash your hands. But also, what's really important is energetically for us to get a place of non-fear and to say, I can do this. I am the divine. And that, by the way, that virus is me as much as I am me. And when we can say that, it's like, well, I don't need to, you know what? You can have your journey, I can have mine. We don't have to interact. And there's no judgment on that, but it's just a shift in the way we live. It's a shift in the way we perceive, right? So then the next thing we're going to talk about, like I started talking about aliens. And I said, well, it's funny how they're pretty much the same thing, but it's just different. Because what? How much time and energy are people putting to the coronavirus? I have like really gotten off social media for the last like couple of weeks because in general, because I'm just tired of seeing it. There's sickness all around the world. And there's reason for that sickness. And it's not that I'm saying that, that everybody should die from a sickness or whatever. It's that, we all have our own lessons and whatever we take on. And so the key is to get to the bottom of the lesson so we can shift beyond it and then not be sick anymore and not have it. Essentially, when we get to that place of such remembrance, then we don't need anything outside of us to help us with it. We can just do it on our own or prevent it. Why are we not, instead of like having this whole panic about washing your hands, which everybody, why don't we do that anyway, right? But why are we not talking about ways to really optimize your existence and health, right? Preventive maintenance. Eating healthy, living a healthy life. Oh, wait, here it goes back to living a happy life. Living, being in a job that you really love, in relationship that honors who you are, and vice versa, and in relationships like that, and really living in a centered, whole, nourishing, loving life. That does more for you not getting any virus or any sickness than anything else out there. So leading into that, because then the fear thing, right? The fear thing causes us to distract ourselves with so much of chatter from the ego. There's like, look, the whole media is like fear-based, because guess what? It tugs at your ego and it says, oh, there's something outside of you that's going to come hurt you. It can come hurt you. Put your armor on, put your shield up. And you could get it, even though out of 8 billion people, only 100,000 or a couple 100,000 people have even gotten it. It's like, oh, but you could get it. You're gonna get it. And the thing is, when we worry about stuff, part of that is, if you look at quantum physics, it's what we create is what we put all of our energy to, right? So you want to put all your energy to worrying about something. Many times we realize that fear. So the key for us is to shift our fear and then move beyond it, to say, okay, it is or it isn't. Passes through or it doesn't. I am above, I can be above that. I'm more powerful than that. I am more than that, because that is me. That's just a tiny part of me, of all of me, right? So shift over to aliens. Let's just jump right into that. There's a lot of talk about disclosure, and, you have a lot of shows now about the Roswell incident, and you have all these things about the government hiding things. I've just been reading this book about, called Behold a Pale Horse, that talks about so many things, conspiracy like level things. But I've seen a lot of stuff lately about what people call aliens. I call them star beings. And the reality is, once we connect to that allness, that wholeness, we realize that that's us too, right? So I talk about that too in our guidance. When we listen to our guidance, the facets of the divine are just different faces of us as whatever that looks like in the message that we need to get. So aliens, well, we look at viruses as alien. We look at, things we don't understand as alien. That's why we use that word alien for beings who are not from here, because it's not of how we understand the way life is formed here on the earth. So if some being lives embodied in an embodiment and physicality in some place besides earth, then we look at it as alien and not a part of what we are. Now, we can have the argument about star beings existing or life existing someplace else or not. That's fine. We do. We exist everywhere. We exist all over the multiverse. There's so many different dimensions of us and forms of us and everything else. And I say us meaning all of us because, what's funny is most of us actually, well, all of us pretty much live there too, or have lived there, or whatever, if you want to look in the time-space continuum, or we have existence in all these other parts of the multiverse too. There's no different whether it's another dimension or another planet. Yet, because we don't yet remember it, we get into this place of fear. And, oh, you can control me. Oh, you can do this. And so those who experience it from a place of they're doing something to me, it has to do with something to resolve within themselves, right? Or an agreement at some level that would happen, because there's nothing, if we're all connected, there's nothing that we don't agree to at some level in this embodiment so that we can have the experience, the lesson, or whatever, right? And I work a lot with that, and so the thing is to forgive ourselves, to apologize, all that kind of stuff, because we've been on both sides of the fence. We've been the alien, we've been the abductees, or whatever you want to call it, right? So here's the funny thing. I have had experiences with star beings for years and years and years. And I have never had any negative experiences with them. It's always been a camaraderie, because there's just this heart connection. And typically the ones I connect with are at this very, high level of vibration. So it's all love and connection based anyway. Now, are there others who are lower vibration and dense like us, or even denser? Yes. But most of them are really not traveling like us. And so where does that take us? Well, if we have those kind of things, what is this? And blah, 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 blah. So you get a lot of things. You get conspiracy theorists talking about the governments setting those things up to unify people to follow their government. There's a lot of stuff about population control out there. There's been stuff I've seen for years that talk about, things that are set up to be presented one way and they're really another. So that a population will fall in line behind their government, because it's like, oh, well, or come together and follow somebody, so that it's a unifying thing, and then they don't question the authority of that whatever governing body or individual. And how is it done? It's done through fear, right? It's done through, oh my God, they're attacking us. Okay, out of all of the movies out there about star beings, aliens, or whatever you want to call them, all the movies out there, how many are there where they are actually friendly? Less than I can count on one hand that I can remember. And those are absolutely beautiful ones, the ones that we do that. So kudos to those who put those movies out there. And I think they're starting to become more common, where it's like, no, a positive and expansive experience, and just a matter of remembering how to communicate together. Arrival is an amazing movie if you haven't seen it. That was out a couple of years ago, and I've seen it a bajillion times, and it's fabulous, because it talks about so many different aspects of this kind of stuff. And it also shows how we, the matter of our connection to other beings in this multiverse has to do with us getting out of our own way, getting out of our own limitations and distractions to say, okay, we're all connected, and this is where we connect from. And then the way we communicate is we figure it out from there. So, like, look at the alien thing. So the alien thing is no different than the coronavirus thing, because the coronavirus is treated like an alien, like, oh my God, it's going to attack you. It's going to attack you. You're going to die, right? It's the same thing, same energy. And it's fear. It's all fear-based. How many things in our life do we do or not do because we are in this place of fear and thinking something is outside of us? And the more we expand ourselves to recognize that everything out there is what's in here, right? What's within, so without, as above, so below, however you want to put it. The more that we do that, the less than we fear, right? What I've come to a place, so one of the things that is very important is when we don't understand something, instead of so what happens more times than not is we distract ourselves with our fear. And then our belief that we have to control something that is outside of our control. So we put this enormous amount of energy and money and time and our life force to put it to this fear, to managing a fear of something that's outside of us, instead of trying to understand it, right? Going back to that quote, we fear what we don't understand. And that's because the ego has, like, we're in looking at individuality and separation and exclusion, we're like, there's something outside of us that could actually hurt us because we don't understand the whole thing. And when we finally get to a place of, oh, well, it's all me. So what if I just listen to my guidance? And my guidance says, well, be in this way or don't be in this way, or do this or don't do this. Or is there something for me to do about this? And I trust that, right? If I don't get that, if I get no, it's fine, then there's nothing to worry about. And think about how much less energy it would take to, like, when you don't fear things, right, incessantly, and instead just focus your energy on being the most of you, right? Many times we use fear and control, distractions and stuff like that to distract ourselves from really realizing what it is we're here to do, and actually really standing in our truth and authenticity, and being out there and the beam in the world, the full symphonic note that we are of this multiverse, each one of us. Because there's an underlying belief of insecurity, unworthiness, and things like that. And so then we put all our energy into other stuff because they're distractions. Oh, or the drama here, this person's drama. Oh, I have to go tend to this person. I have to be with this person because they're going through this. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, I can't do this. I have to put all this energy to not getting sick. I have to buy all these things, and I have to talk about it incessantly and watch the news 24 hours a day and all kind of stuff. And yet not one thing comes from that centered higher consciousness. It's all from the ego. I have to, I have to have a storm, what do they call them? A bunker, like a bunker, right? There's a kind of thing, a word that goes along with that. But I have to have a bunker with, like, food rations and everything else when we have the zombie apocalypse, right? And you might laugh at that, but there are a lot of people out there who have storm bunkers and who have, like, a reserve of food and everything else. And I had asked a long time ago, because yes, we have a lot of I call them catalytic events going on in this world right now. Some people call them cataclysmic. I call them catalytic. Catalytic events to me is just something that's going to spur us into change that is really important for us to change as a collective. So, there are many who are saying, like, oh, there's, like, world this, there's world that, there are big things going on. We're going to have an implosion. We're going to have a world war. We're going to have an intergalactic war. We're going to, we have these beings, controlling us. We have the government controlling us. Think about all the energy we put to that. It's amazing we ever do anything for ourselves. It's amazing that we ever do anything in standing in our own truth and authenticity, because of how much we have gleaned. And now with the overstimulation and overaccess, I want to say overaccess, it's almost like too much information that we get distracts us. We could spend our entire lives never doing one thing that is what we're truly here to be. Not being one, I said doing one thing that we're truly here to be, not being who we're here to truly be. And the more we get out of that place of fear and into that place of love and acceptance and power, and knowing I can change anything I create it, I can change it. And if I don't remember it, I can trust my guidance, who can guide me along until I get context and understand it. And when you start living in that place, it starts being a whole lot less scary, right? Because then you're not depending on the ego to make your judgments for you. Because we always say, oh, the ego protects you. Well, there's nothing to protect ourselves from when we know that we're connected to everything. And there are different ways of dealing with different things. And we have different things that present themselves to us differently as we shift our consciousness and understanding. So this week, your home play is to be observant to where you are really living in fear. When we come from a place of self-nourishment and acceptance and unconditional love, then we can actually, then we do things like we take care of ourselves. Then we naturally come from a place like we'll just naturally be in relationships that nurture us. We'll naturally be in situations that nurture us, because then we don't need anything from outside, and we're just expressing that nurturing and that loving from inside, and then it mirrors back to us and what we have around us, right? When we realize that we're worthy of that, and we're worthy of an easy existence, of a healthy one, of a flowing one, right? That's so much easier then putting all this in. And so, I mean, it really is easier. It is easier to be in a place of love and centeredness than it is to be in fear. Because when you're in fear, you put all this energy to the fear, and you take your energy off of the moment instead of like all like the ego is projecting, what if this, what if I die, what if I get sick, what if my kids do da, 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 da. Oh no, and I have to protect myself. And like the protection idea is perpetuating separation, right? Instead of going inside and saying, okay, so what is there for me to do to allow myself to be free of those kind of limitations, or sicknesses, injuries, or whatever. And the more adept we become at that, the easier our lives become. And we could live right next door to somebody who has a horrible experience in their world, and yet, or even in the same house, and we can still have a really strong, powerful, nourishing, love-based one ourselves. So look in your life where you're being distracted by fear, by the need, the belief that you have to control and over control what's outside of you instead of realizing that it's all you anyway. And then start to look inside with your own self practice, whatever that is. Hopefully there you have some kind of meditation, self energy work, whatever that you're doing. Even journaling is a form of meditation, to go in and be like, so what can I change, or what can I do so that I stay in this place of centeredness and unconditional love, and I commit myself to listening to my guidance over everything else. That's what it always comes down to. If I had an alien being in front of us, right, the first thing that would happen, right, is the ego like goes, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, right? Many times, if we're run by fear. But what if you see something and you're not quite sure what it is? And then the next, and instead of fearing it, you just ask what it is. And you ask to be able to see it in its true light and understand it. And is it something for you to interact with? And if you get yes, then trust. Oh my God, what an easier kind of experience, right? So lots to think about. This is a huge one because this takes us into the world of conspiracy stuff, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff lately about government control, about how there's programming through the satellites, why so many people are having like thrumming in their ears and heads and everything else. And it's like, when we get to a place, it's the same thing as a virus, by the way, no different. It's the same thing. When we get to a place of saying, okay, well, I choose not to have that experience. I choose to be free of that and to see it for what it is, and then to shift my experience so that I'm not affected by it, but I'm unaffected by it. And then, but then, then you're a little more curious. I mean, I've been looking at some stuff because I've seen it out there for a long time. And then it's funny how I see things coming into this reality that are reflecting that as well. And it's like, okay, well, then we just shift. And then the questions start to be different because they're not fear-based. Like, why? Why is this? Why not this? And all that kind of stuff. And that's a discussion for another day, maybe Monday with Sarah. So anyway, have a great week. Lots to think about. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Have a good one.